you got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No, that's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government. I actually never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't happen.
You wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed to outlaw
it was law.
discrimination.
No. Well, that's what they said it was designed to do.
Okay, you cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I've exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on. And that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did, yeah.
It took a while. You have voluntarily come into this studio and agreed to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's
she.
never happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said. And then the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that...
Well, only in the broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian, yes, which they are.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a tough time over the years. You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who saw the deaths of millions of people. Well, even if the activists, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things.
Yeah, but they don't have a right to speak for their whole community.
To compare them to Chairman Mao, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, this is grossly insensitive.
No, I didn't compare them to Pinochet.
Well,
I did compare them to...
He was an authoritarian.
He's a right-winger, though. I was comparing them to the left-wing totalitarians. And I do believe they are left-wing totalitarians.
Under Mao, millions of people died.
Right.
I mean, there's no comparison between Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists could lead to the deaths of millions of people?
I'm saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual. It matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
The Anti-Defamation League. ADL applauds Google and YouTube an expanding initiative to fight online hate. New York, August 1st, 2017. The Anti-Defamation League today welcomes progress announced by Google and YouTube in blocking and removing extremist content on YouTube. Google recently started using machine learning technology, which has allowed it to remove more than 75% of violent extremism videos during the past month. ADL is a select contributing member of YouTube's Trusted Flagger program, created in 2012 to enable organizations to notify the platform of content that violates their community guidelines. Google is a long-standing member of the ADL's Silicon Valley Anti-Cyber Hate Working Group.
ADL and the University of California at Berkeley's D-Lab have been working to develop a new approach to tackle online hate using the latest methods. The goal of the Online Hate Index is to help tech platforms better understand the growing amount of hate on social media and to use that information to address the problem. By combining artificial intelligence and machine learning with social science, the Online Hate Index will ultimately uncover and identify trends and patterns in hate speech across different platforms. We've just completed our first phase of research, and we found that the machine learning model identified hate speech accurately between 78 and 85% of the time. In the next phase of our project, we will look at specific targeted populations in a more detailed manner. We'll examine content on multiple social media sites, and we'll identify strategies to deploy the model more broadly. While there's still a long way to go with artificial intelligence and machine learning-based solutions, we believe the Online Hate Index will help tech companies better understand the extent of hateful content on their platforms by creating community-based definitions of hate speech.
Fox News, March 1st, 2018. YouTube has tapped far-left group to help police content. YouTube has enlisted far-left Southern Poverty Law Center to assist with policing content, according to the Daily Caller. The Law Center, or Southern Poverty Law Center, bills itself as a civil rights organization that is dedicated to fighting hate and bigotry. CNN, February 24th, 2018. Infowars' main YouTube channel is 2 strikes away from being banned. Infowars, a far-right media organization run by Alex Jones and known for peddling unfounded conspiracy theories, is on thin ice with YouTube after it posted a video that portrayed the survivors of the Parkland school shooting as actors. The Hill, February 27th, 2018. Infowars 1 strike away from YouTube ban. And here is the actual notification from YouTube. Attention, as you know, our community guidelines describe which content we allow and don't allow on YouTube. Your videos, what is to blame for the Florida high school shooting, the truth about crisis actors in the Florida shooting, were flagged for review. Upon review, we determined that they violate our guidelines. We've removed them from YouTube and assigned a community guideline strike or temporary penalty to your account.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live on Facebook here on Saturday morning, and we're live on Twitter, on Periscope. That's it. We cannot go live on the Alex Jones channel. It's been frozen for a 3rd time in 1 week. Now, if you're just joining us, they're counting on you to not understand what's happening. This is part of a total purge of libertarians, Christians, nationalists, pro-gun groups from Australia to the UK to the US, Europe. They are arresting hundreds of people a day in Sweden and Germany that just say we shouldn't have open borders to ISIS. They are imprisoning women. I mean, it's all over the news, but only here. In Europe, you're not allowed to report on it. Police chiefs are being fired that say we're having thousands of rapes by Islamic rape gangs. The censorship is unbelievable. Chinese communist-style censorship, where they don't announce it, they just block you, is here. Now, YouTube admitted that their servers were hijacked by employees that weren't supposed to in the last week, and thousands of channels were deleted. How huge is that? They said we hired the Southern Poverty Law Center, 10,000 people, this leftist globalist offshore group. We hired 10,000 of them, YouTube said, that's Google, to run things. The fact is, they're being directed by political groups to not give service and violate the contracts of millions of people. If you can lose a suit for $500,000 for not baking a gay couple's cake, well, if you don't bake the cake, they can't sit there and say, well, you can't be on YouTube. Prager University's suing. They're all suing. These folks are in full control. And they're globalist, and they're doing this, and then people get confused.
Dennis Prager operates Prager University, which creates videos online to educate people. He's recently sued Google and its subsidiary YouTube. He says they've deliberately restricted his videos so they have less reach and are ineligible for ad revenue. Dennis Prager joins us tonight. Dennis, that's a heavy-duty charge. Clearly, I don't think you would have filed a lawsuit without evidence to support it. Tell us what you know, why they did this to you.
They have placed on their restricted list. That means that it can't be viewed in libraries, in schools, or any home that filters out pornography, for example. Cannot be seen in any of those places. Our videos are as innocent as exists on the internet. 4 Pulitzer Prize winners, professors from Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Yale. I mean, it is about as normative and conservative, but we don't only have conservatives. Alan Dershowitz has given a number of videos, and by the way, his video was placed on the restricted list as well.
On March 3rd, 2018, Mike Adams and Natural News had their entire YouTube channel deleted, including over 1,700 previously released videos. YouTuber Ashton Whitty received strikes and had her videos taken down for questioning the official narrative of the Parkland shooting. The Military Arms channel received strikes and had videos taken down for posting about, you guessed it, military weapons.
Welcome, Dr. Corsi.
Great to be with you, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, and tell us what the current status of your YouTube account is now. It's going up and down and up and down.
Well, yesterday late, on Thursday, I got notice that YouTube, I guess it blinked, they've changed their mind, and they were going to restore my channel on YouTube. And then by this morning, when I got up and recognized that it was back and that in fact, I had a message from the YouTube team saying they would help me restore the channel. That evidently, they backed down. They just decided that they were wrong, and they couldn't justify terminating my channel, accusing me of harassment and bullying, which I never do. I mean, that's not. I'm not. They couldn't prove I had done it. Yeah. And the point is that. It was completely arbitrary. The whole thing was completely arbitrary.
And the YouTube community was truly shaken to its core when classical liberal Sargon of Akkad received strikes and had his YouTube account temporarily suspended.
And I still don't actually know what's happened. I don't know whether I've been directly targeted by YouTube. I don't know whether this has been a kind of malicious use of past things that have happened, but haven't been addressed for some reason, because I mean I just don't know. And I think that what's happened is 3 years ago I got into a year ago I got into a spat with another YouTuber after I crushed him in a debate, and he got a bit angry about me taking a few clips from the debate that he had with another person and hosting them with a descriptive title and description. And so he DMCA'd them. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to be petty about it. I'll just let him go. It was on my secondary channel, and it made him look worse if I let him shut the channel down, so I didn't think anything of it. And the best information I'm working on at the moment is that for some reason, over a year later, YouTube has decided to penalize me because of that. And I'm not even sure why. I didn't know that was in terms and conditions. I've had no warning. They've said nothing about it for over a year. And it's come on the heels of what is being, I think, rightly called the YouTube purge, which, after all of the outcry, YouTube is starting to walk back. But let's be honest, we all know the sort of ideological state of YouTube. We know the kind of things they believe. We know the kind of people running it. We know the environment in which they live. And it's all ridiculous. It's social justice nonsense. And they know that we use their platform, and they've got every incentive to get rid of us. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily being ideologically targeted, because I just don't know. It just happens to have come at exactly the same time as an event that seems to obviously be ideological targeting. So, who knows? Oh, yes.
How does this work for you in terms of that sort of Damocles hanging by a thread thing? Because there is that temptation, and of course this is the mind virus in a sense they're trying to implant, is back off from the controversies, become bland, fade into the background, become beige. How is it for you in terms of the content that you produce? Is there kind of like a fuse that gets tripped in you, like, okay, maybe I'll cool it for a bit, or some people are like, this inflames my self-righteous jetpack to Mach 12 speeds? I mean, where does this sit for you?
Personally, I don't think I've ever really done anything wrong. I think that my high crime is going after their sacred cows, because I think that there are severe problems with the way their social cows are, their sacred cows are, I guess, constructed is my problem. I find that they're on weak foundations, and they lead to very negative and frankly oppressive conclusions, and I want to oppose that. But this means that I'm going against a precious orthodoxy that is the sort of thing that gets people labelled as all sorts of names, even though those labels aren't necessarily true. At the end of the day, facts are facts, and you have to accept those facts. But not only that, one thing that really annoys me is the sort of ideological usurpation of terms like liberal, and they've completely stolen these words. And I'm sorry, I am actually a liberal, like an English liberal. I actually follow the sort of that's my belief system. And so when I see collectivists suggesting that we should racially categorize people, it's not very liberal, is it? So I find myself deeply opposed to it. But honestly, when it comes to sitting under the sword of Damocles, I don't mind.
It is abundantly clear that YouTube is using the veil of protecting people from hate speech, bigotry, and online bullying to censor those who question official government narratives or those who put out messaging that goes against the agenda of the political establishment in power. Ashton Whitty questioned the official government narrative of the Parkland High School shooting, received strikes, and had her videos taken down. It doesn't matter if we agree with her or not. If we as a people don't have the ability to question those in power, what incentive is there for those in power not to tell lies? Perhaps no one questions official government narratives more than Alex Jones and Infowars. It doesn't matter what we think of Alex Jones. It doesn't matter what we think of Infowars. If their channel is able to be shut down, it sends a message to everyone, because they're really large, that if you question official government agendas, official government narratives, we will silence you. This is very dangerous. There's clearly been an anti-Second Amendment agenda being pushed from the top. Gun control, take the guns, you're going to be killed in a mass shooting. It sends a message to all people that you may have your account deleted if you push a pro-Second Amendment message. And just think about how dangerous this is. They're blatantly attacking the First and Second Amendments. These are the pillars of what make us free. These are the core, the backbone of a liberal, free, constitutional society. Prager University, who pushes a very basic conservative message, has currently filed a lawsuit against Google and YouTube because their videos can't be shown in academic settings. And Sargon of Akkad, a self-described classical liberal, had his account temporarily suspended for no given reason. It's a message to all people on YouTube, to all content creators. Do not push a narrative that goes against the political agenda of those in power. Don't push a message of conservatism. Don't push a message of libertarianism or classical liberalism, which, by the way, I am. And by the way, I hadn't followed Sargon of Akkad, but thank you, YouTube. I do now follow him, because if he's dangerous to you, he's a friend of me, or a friend of mine. But suspending his account and Alex Jones's account and going after Prager sends a message: do not post content that goes against our agenda. Self-censor. You see, the government in the United States of America has had a tougher time than other governments, because in America we have a First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech and restricts the government's ability to censor our freedom of speech. So they have partnered with YouTube, partnered with big tech to censor people who go against government narratives. And they use the guise, the veil, the umbrella of hate speech, protecting people from hate speech, protecting people from bigotry and bullying. The same formula that we have seen used in countries like Sweden, Germany, and all over Europe to censor political dissent. The Daily Mail. How Europe's most liberal nation gagged its own people on migration attacks. The Swedish conspiracy to hide the truth about the refugee influx. Last year, 163,000 from the war-torn Middle East and poverty-stricken Africa came to Sweden, a country of 9.8 million people. This is the highest per capita ratio in any European Union nation, easily topping even Angela Merkel's Germany. Sweden has accepted about 1 in 7 of all the migrants entering Europe. The Swedish government seized the moral high ground in Europe by offering shelter to almost anyone who knocked. Those who criticized the radical plan were condemned as racist in what has become the European Union's citadel of political correctness. By last year, 16% of Sweden's population was foreign-born, many of them from Muslim countries. As the migration crisis has escalated, any citizen who questioned whether the country could afford such largesse and expressed concerns about its changing culture has been accused of bigotry. As Ivar Arpi, a respected Swedish columnist, said in the pages of The Spectator magazine recently, immigration cannot be discussed frankly in Sweden. If you mention anything negative about the refugees, you are accused of playing into the hands of the reviled far right. As a result, even those with legitimate concerns are silenced or labeled xenophobic. Overall, the media aroused in me a new emotion towards Sweden: contempt. Referring to the crackdown on free speech by the Stasi secret police in East Germany in communist times, he continued, things aren't quite as bad as East Germany, as dissident Swedes are wont to say, but this country no longer has full freedom of speech. The left, that is to say, the Swedish media and establishment, is not interested in debating mass immigration. They are ideologically committed to imposing it, come what may, for the greater good, and anybody who disagrees is a fascist, a Nazi, or a racist. After a large escalation in sexual attacks mentioned above, and this article is attached in the reference notes, the police and also a number of journalists have since admitted they got management orders to scale down reports on criminal activities involving non-Swedish people. When is our mainstream media going to report what actually happens regarding sexual abuse by boys and men of certain cultures here in Sweden? How is Sweden to prevent this male-perpetrated behavior tearing our girls apart? We have discovered only recently that murders, rape, and abuse are happening in migrant hotels. Stockholm and Gothenburg are tormented by criminal gangs, while sexual abuse of young girls is occurring at public swimming pools. The left wing has fooled almost all politicians and journalists to view themselves as racist or bad people if they do not say what is politically correct on migration. Sweden is in a terrible situation.
Welcome to Utopia, also known as Sweden. Sweden has been a laboratory of social experiments. Swedish leaders believe they're building the perfect society. And Sweden has been compared to a couple of nations which also tried to build perfect societies, North Korea and the Soviet Union. If you don't like how Utopia is being built here, you won't be shot like in North Korea, but your life could become very unpleasant very quickly.
Hallå, hallå. Jimmy Fredriksson från Expressen.
Jimmy Fredriksson? Jaha du.
This is a journalist from one of Sweden's leading tabloids confronting a Swede at his home. The man, a professor, made what he thought were anonymous negative comments on a website about immigrant problems in Sweden. But left-wing hackers helped the newspaper track him down and others like him, so that they could be exposed before the whole nation as racist. This man, a manager, was fired because of it. Sweden's leftist establishment and media believe a cornerstone of their perfect society is multiculturalism, large-scale immigration from some of the poorest, most backward nations on earth. And Swedes who disagree with that plan risk being labeled racist, fascist, even Nazi.
The rules of the game in Sweden is to avoid being hostile to immigration. It's the most important point to prove that you're friendly towards foreigners, you're friendly towards immigration.
Danish journalist Mikael Jalving is author of the book Absolute Sweden.
It's all about whether or not you can be said to be hostile to immigration, Once that is proven, you're out of the game.
And forget about an American-style melting pot in which immigrants will someday learn to become Swedish. That's a racist idea, too. Jalving says Swedes are supposed to learn from immigrants and not the other way around.
Assimilation is completely out of the question.
Who says assimilation is completely out of the question?
Everybody in all mainstream political parties and media and platforms would laugh about the word assimilation is a Nazi word in Sweden.
We talked to several journalists who described a Stalinist-style atmosphere in Sweden, in which citizens are now afraid of saying anything that might get them labeled in the media as racist.
They point at you and say you're a racist. Then you will have no career, no job, you might lose your family.
Swedish journalist Ingrid Carlqvist and Danish journalist Lars Hedegaard run the online newspaper Dispatch International, which covers issues like immigration that the mainstream media in Sweden ignores. But Carlqvist says their plan for a traditional newspaper failed because Swedes were too scared to have the paper delivered to their homes.
Because what if the mailman saw that you had this newspaper? What if your neighbor saw it? Then they might think that you are a racist or that you hate Muslims.
Sweden has become a nation where some viewpoints are simply too risky to even read.
What wise Swedish parents do nowadays is to advise their kids not to interfere in the public discussion, not to express so-called radical ideas about this or that.
Because why? Why do they advise them?
Because they're afraid. Whether or not this is...
kids won't get work?
Yeah, it'll harm them.
Germany has started the year by introducing a new law to tackle hate speech, but it's already been criticised for blocking the Twitter feed of a satirical magazine. And as Samira Khan now explains, applying this kind of legislation can be a legal minefield.
Well, governments are now trying to regulate content on the internet by pushing the online world to crack down on hate speech, extremism, and of course the mysterious bots and trolls who somehow managed to elect presidents. But so far their attempts haven't exactly been successful. For example, in Germany, a new online hate speech law only came into force on Monday, and Twitter has already banned a parody account after users reported it as hate speech. But under the law, platforms have to delete violent or slanderous content by a certain deadline or face a fine up to $60 million. Well, the first case, a far-right politician of the Alternative for Germany party had her Twitter account briefly suspended after users flagged her tweets as hate speech against Muslims. Now, that's after she lashed out against German police for putting out a New Year's tweet in Arabic. And prosecutors are now examining whether or not her tweets do, in fact, incite hatred. Then on top of that, Twitter banned the account of a magazine that was actually mocking her, but in doing so, repeated her line. Now, the magazine's editor said he was shocked by the decision, and the Association of German Journalists said that it qualifies as censorship, adding that they'd warned of this danger when the law was drafted last year.
Another blow for Marine Le Pen. The French far-right leader has been placed under formal investigation for posting on Twitter a series of gruesome images of Islamic State group violence, including the execution of American journalist James Foley. The tweets date back to December 2015, a few weeks after the Paris terrorist attacks. Le Pen posted the images in response to a comparison made by a journalist between her National Front party and the Islamic State group. Prosecutors stepped up their investigation after the French Parliament stripped Le Pen of her immunity from prosecution as an MP last year. If the case eventually goes to trial and she's convicted, she could face up to 3 years in prison and a €75,000 fine.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that...
Well, only in the broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian, yes, which they are.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a tough time over the years. You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who saw the deaths of millions of people. Well, even if the activists, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things.
Yeah, but they don't have a right to speak for their whole community.
To compare them to Chairman Mao, Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, this is grossly insensitive.
I didn't compare them to Pinochet.
Well,
I did compare them to
he was an authoritarian.
He's a right-winger, though. I was comparing them to the left-wing totalitarians. Okay, and I do believe they are left-wing totalitarians.
Under Mao, millions of people died.
Right.
I mean, there's no comparison between Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists could lead to the deaths of millions of people?
No, I'm saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual. It matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
Identity politics are used to keep people divided, to view themselves as members of a group based on some outward characteristics such as skin color, and to not view people as individuals. Hate speech is used by governments all over the world to censor those of political dissent against the establishment of power. The problem with limiting hate speech is who gets to define what hate is, and that will always be those in power, and those in power will always have an interest in silencing political dissent. It's why all totalitarian regimes go so out of their way to silence anyone who dare speak up against them. YouTube is censoring channels, deleting channels left and right. I don't know how much longer my channel will be up. Please follow my other social media in case they delete this channel so you could find where else I spring up. I'm Tom Anderson on Steemit, TomFFRnews on Twitter, Tom Anderson on Gabs, TomFFRnews on Minds, Tom Anderson on Facebook, FFR News on Facebook. If you want to support me financially, I'd really appreciate it. www.patreon.com/FFRnews. Let's continue to fight for the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, all the amendments. Long live liberty. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.